videos from 4 years ago.
Who doesn't love trick-or-treating, am I right? I mean, candy.
Soul cakes and the origin of trick-or-treating.
Who doesn't love trick-or-treating, am I right? I mean, candy, costumes, what's not to like? But did you know that before going around to strangers' houses and begging for candy became a thing, the treat of choice was actually cakes? And so that's what we are going to be making today. A 400-year-old recipe for soul cakes. Traditionally, these little cakes are served on All Souls Day, and they have a fascinating past going all the way back to the time of the Druids. So get ready for some Halloween history, this time on Tasting History.
In the neighborhood where I used to live, I know we're only 30 seconds in, I paused it. There was, it was a big circle. This is when I lived in Massachusetts. It was a big circle. And so you would do a whole lap around, get all your candy. Well, there was a circle, and then there were the two joining roads that came into it. So it was kind of like, it looked like a little bean person. So you start at the end, come around, do your lap around, and then you go to the other roads. And then at the end, you always hit this house last, because there was a house that would hand out Capri Suns instead of candy. And that was the best house in the lot, because once you go through around everything, you're thirsty as hell, right? So then you hit that house last, you get your drink, you go home, you start bartering your candies with your buddies, and then you just... It was great. I to this day, I'm still convinced that it was the best house in the neighborhood for Halloween, because it made the route so much better.
Today's recipe comes from Eleanor Fettiplace's receipt book. It was written in the late 16th and early 17th century, but it wasn't put out then as an actual cookbook. Rather, it was someone's personal recipes that they compiled, and they were passed down the Fettiplace family tree until they were finally published in the 1980s. To make cakes, take flour and sugar and nutmeg and cloves and mace and sweet butter and sack and a little ale barm. Beat your spice and put in your butter and your sack cold, then work it well all
Shouldn't watch this video with an eye track.
together, and make it in little cakes, and so bake them. If you will, you may put in some saffron into them or fruit. So while Eleanor doesn't actually call them soul cakes in her book, these are the little buns that would have been served around all sorts of holidays, but especially on All Souls Day.
What?
So what you'll need is 1/2 cup or 120 milliliters of lukewarm ale. Make sure to keep it under 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius, or you could kill the yeast. 1 teaspoon of yeast, 3 cups or 360 grams of flour, 1/2 cup or 100 grams of sugar, 4 tablespoons of softened butter, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, only if you're using unsalted butter, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/4 teaspoon of clove, 1/4 teaspoon of mace, 1/3 cup sack or sherry, 1/4 teaspoon of saffron threads, optional, sack or sherry,
saffron threads? That does not look edible. What are those?
1/4 teaspoon of saffron threads, optional, and 3/4 cup dried fruit, plus more for decoration. Now the fruit is optional as well, as is how you use it. You can actually put it into the dough, or you can use it as decoration, or you can do as I'm going to do, and use it as...
I am anti-fruit in my, like, cakes and breads. Like blueberry pancakes. Chocolate chips all the way.
As decoration, and have it put into the dough. Just make sure that it's cut up small, so you can use whatever you want, cherries or currants or apricots.
I remember, okay. I still technically work there, so I can't say the place where I used to work, but a little like sandwich shop near where I live back home where I work. We started selling new flavors of muffins. So we got coffee cakes, like coffee cake muffins, and they looked really good. So I went to go try one day, but I thought I saw something in it. So I was like, okay, if there is something in there that I don't like, I don't want it to catch me off guard. So I cut it into quarters. There were raisins in my coffee cake muffin. Ruined my day. Ruined it. Who the hell puts raisins in a coffee cake muffin, bro? That was awful. Why would you ever do that? Also, like, and I am dissing raisins are, but like, put literally anything else. Like,
or whatever, but make sure they're cut up small. You can use whatever you want, cherries or currants or apricots or whatever, but make sure they're cut up small so they incorporate well. You can also have an optional egg for an egg wash. Now, while Miss Fetterplace gives us permission to add either saffron or fruit, I've always been a fan
I can't watch food videos because then I get hungry.
of why choose or when and is on the table, so I'm going to be using saffron and fruit, and Miss Fetterplace will just have to be okay with that. So the first step is making something akin to ale barm, because what ale barm is the yeast that grows during the process of making ale. And it's going to be hard for most people to find that unless they're brewing ale at home. So we're going to make something that will work instead. So mix your yeast into the lukewarm ale and let it sit for about 10 minutes. Then in a separate bowl, put your saffron threads into the sack or the sherry and let those sit for 10 minutes as well. Of course, if you're not going to use saffron, then skip that part.
What the hell is saffron? Oh. It is a color, but it's also a plant. Well, it's not a plant. It's a spice for cooking. Comes from dried stigmas or parts of a female flower's parts of the flower's female reproductive organ. So it's flower fallopian tubes. I have no idea. I don't even want to know.
While those sit, take a large bowl and whisk together the flour and the sugar, as well as the salt, the nutmeg, the clove, and the mace. Once the yeasted ale has sat for about 10 minutes, pour it into the flour mixture and work it in. Then add your softened butter and the sack with the saffron. Also, if you're using the dried fruit, add that in and mix everything together. Now this dough is really, really sticky, so once we start kneading it a bit, it will become easier to work with, but if it's still just way too sticky, go ahead and add a little bit more flour until it's workable. Either way, how much you knead it is really up to you because she doesn't give us a lot of instruction in that. So if you want it to be more bread-like, then you're going to knead it for probably about 15 minutes or so like you would a normal loaf of bread. And that's going to make it so it's a little bit springier, but it's also going to be more chewy, like bread. Then if you want it to be more like a cake, a little bit crumblier, then knead it for like 4 or 5 minutes at most. But just know that it's never going to have the same consistency as a cake that's been leavened with baking powder and baking soda. Yeasted cakes just are going to have a little bit more chew to them, and that's just how it goes. I'm going in the middle. I'm kneading it for about 7 or 8 minutes, so I can kind of see, is this bread? Is this cake? No need to decide. But once you have kneaded the bread, then leave it to rise for about 45 minutes. Know that it's not going to rise as much as most bread doughs, especially if you've incorporated any fruit. It will probably just get a little bit puffy, and that's okay. But once that 45 minutes is up or the dough gets a little bit puffy, go ahead and form it into about 10 to 12 little balls or cakes. Now traditionally these cakes would have a little cross put onto them, either by cutting or just kind of indenting a cross, or by actually putting some fruit on it, which is what I'm going to do. But if you don't want to put a cross on it, you could also just put maybe a wee little ghost on there, and then it would still be a soul cake. But really, you can put whatever you want. But regardless of the design that you choose, let them sit for another 20 minutes or so while you preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius. Once the cakes have had time to rest, you can go ahead and put that optional egg wash on, or else just set them in the oven and bake for 20 minutes. Now, while the aroma of sweet saffron
A wee little ghost is what I look like when I stand in the sun.
wafts through your house, make sure to hit that like button as we go back to the origins of soul cakes. A soul cake. Please, good missus, a soul cake. An apple, a pear, a plum, a cherry, any good thing to make us all merry. 1 for Peter, 2 for Paul, 3 for him who made us all. From the Middle Ages until the early 20th century, variations on this song or other soul cake songs were sung by people going house to house on All Souls Eve
Yeah, bars.
or November 1st, making a plea for sweet treats, ale, and as the song implies, soul cakes. Today, of course, it's more often done on Halloween itself, and the song has been turned into a more pithy trick or
I'll plug that into the AI song generator that we were
treat,
messing with last
and
night.
it usually doesn't involve either ale or cake anymore. Probably best since it's mostly little kids. But anyway, how did this practice get started? Well, like so many of our holiday traditions, we have the pagans to thank. Specifically, this time,
Yes! Rise up, pagans.
the Druids. Before Christianity came to the British Isles, the Celtic people celebrated a festival called
Celts.
Samhain. It marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter. The festival was dedicated to the dying sun and end of the harvest season.
What
and
is that word?
People celebrated a festival called Samhain. It marked
Sawin? My guy, that does not say Sawin. What the hell? What the hell? I know that like Gaelic and like Welsh is like impossible to pronounce. It's like town names in Massachusetts. There's a town in Mass called Worcester, but it's spelt with like WORC. It looks like it's just say like Worcester, but it's Worcester. And this is very much the same.
the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter. The festival was dedicated to the dying sun and the shortening days of winter. But it was also thought that during the festival, the boundary between the land of the living and that of the dead was more easily crossed, allowing the dead to visit their temporal loved ones. Even now in Ireland, you can visit Neolithic passage tombs, which are aligned with the sunrise
Whoa. That's super cool.
during the time of Samhain. So if dearly departed Granny is coming all the way over from the netherworld, it would only be polite to have a snack waiting for her when she got there. And one of the snacks that was most popular with the Celts was a little round cake. The whole thing is similar to Dia de Muertos, celebrated in Mexico today.
I talked about that in the reaction that we did like 2 videos ago with the what video was that? Was it was the jack-o'-lantern one. It was the pumpkin cheesecake one.
And that makes me really want to watch the movie Coco because I freaking love that movie.
Coco is good. I like The Book of Life better. I liked Coco. I thought Coco was a good movie. I think The Book of Life is better. I prefer The Book of Life. Yeah, that's just me.
Anyway, while it's great to see old Granny again, her opening the door to the land
Also, The Book of Life has a crazy cast. It has a lot of big. It has like the 3 main characters are 3 pretty big actors.
of the dead often lets some of the more seedy characters through as well. The Aeshi, or spirits and fairies, would pop through and run amok on the farm. So if you want your
Manolo is Diego Luna. Joaquin is fucking Channing Tatum. And Maria is Zoe Saldana, who's Gamora in the Guardians movies. So
cattle and livestock to make it through winter alive, you need to placate those mischievous little spirits. Luckily, they also seemed to like cakes. So all was well in the British
like
Isles
cakes.
until the 6th through 8th century when a new religion came knocking on old Albion's door. Knock, knock, it's me, Christianity.
oh my god, here they come to ruin everything. I'm sorry. Here comes Christianity to take away everything fun about the pagans.
Love what you've done with the place. The holiday, wow, perfection. Wouldn't change a thing, except maybe the name. Let's start there. And just like that, Samhain turned into All Hallows Eve, or
Yep.
Halloween, on October 31st, All Saints Day or All Souls Eve on November 1st, and then All Souls Day on November 2nd. They also got rid of the bonfires because, those are dangerous, though those will be coming back in a few centuries around Guy Fawkes Day, Bonfire Night. But they did want to keep those lovely little cakes that the Celts were making, as well as the whole, dead loved ones kind of thing. They really liked that. But instead of having them come back from the dead, they decided, they can stay where they are in purgatory, and we'll just pray for them instead. And so a new tradition was born, called...
Whoa. Which button did I press for? Oh, it's V. I didn't know V did that. We're discovering new things. Joe Bart, yeah. I might watch that later.
Souling.
I didn't know that V did that.
And that was where people would go from house to house, usually the poor.
What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. Boring. Christianity making these cool things boring again. I'm not making fun of Christians. Because I already know when I put this on YouTube, the YouTube comments are gonna be like, you're taking Christ's name in vain. You're going to hell. I'm like, I'm already going to hell. I'm a pagan man. Like, I already got my foot in the door.
Offering their prayers for the immortal soul of Granny, and all that they asked in return was a little cake. And as it was considered an alm for the poor, the tradition of putting a cross on it developed sometime in the Middle Ages. Now, while sanctioned by the church at large, the actual practices of the night varied wildly from place to place around the British Isles. In Wales, the giving of cakes was less to encourage prayers and more to actually placate death itself. When knocking on doors, the visitor would say, "Decca, Decca, come to the door and give to the messenger of death." And if no cake was given, then Decca, Decca, under the door, the wife's head in smithereens. Kind of dark.
Whoa.
I'm sure it also rhymed in the
That escalated quickly.
original Welsh. But sure makes you glad of the more innocuous trick-or-treat that kids say today. In parts of England, people would go around with lit candles or lanterns as they walked around to ward off witches. And in some places, it was common for the knockers to actually be mummers, who were actors in a sort of costume. Some would dress as the evil spirits that they were trying to ward off, and others would simply dress as their favorite saint. And who are you supposed to be? I'm St. Chelfrith of Monkwearmouth, contributor to the Codex Amiatinus Bible. Oh, well, isn't that nice? Have a Baby Ruth. Speaking of Baby Ruths, as candy took pride of place during the 20th century, soul cake...
I should do a Halloween candy tier list. I think that's what we do for our Halloween stream. I had a different plan for the Halloween stream. I think that we do that.
all but disappeared from the festivities, leaving way for hard Tootsie Rolls and candy corn. But they are still served, mostly at churches in some parts of Britain and America, on that third day of the festival, All Souls Day. So while
Whatever candies are on the list that I find, I will try and find them as well. So we can try them. And actually like see how I feel about them. So
I don't
have
expect
to,
these to
see a picture.
outperform a Kit Kat or a Snickers, I do think that by the smell that
Snickers,
I'm smelling right now, they might do a little bit better than, say, some Smarties or those little wax cola bottles that nobody ever eats. So
That's not true. My sister, Elsie, loves those whack Coca-Cola bottles, and I will never understand why. Because they're so bad. Just go eat a candle. I don't...
after 20 minutes in the oven, take the cakes out and set them on a wire rack to cool. And here they are, 17th century soul cakes.
They're bad. They are bad. These look pretty good, though. I could do without the fruit, but they look good.
They're so cute. They just
They are
look so
cute.
nice. And they smell so good. You can really smell the saffron. So if you're not using saffron, you should use saffron. But those other spices will probably really take pride of place. But for me, what I'm smelling is saffron, and I love that. Though I can also smell the other spices in there. Anyway, let's give this a shot. They're good. They're good. They're not a cake at all. I mean, I think the modern day soul cakes are a little bit more cake-like. This is not a cake. It's definitely
just bread?
closer to a bread, but not as soft or springy. It's a little bit more dense. But they're nice. I think that one will do just fine, but I really like the flavor. The flavor is what gets me. It's mild, but it's sweet and saffrony, and you can taste the other spices, but nothing really overpowers anything. So I do think that it would go well with, something to drink, because they are a little drier than I might like. But they're fun, and don't hand these out to people at trick-or-treating because the kids will be very mad, but maybe if you...
Yeah. Kids today wouldn't like them. Because they want, like, their actual candy bars. But I'd take them. That looks pretty good. I have nothing against that.